it's Jess. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be one of my favorites to film every year. It's one of my favorite videos to make because it's just me talking about the best books that I read in the year. To be honest, sometimes I have a harder time talking about books that I love than books that I hate. It's possible that this entire video will be an incoherent mess. However, I'm going to enjoy it. So, sorry about it, but you're here anyways. In 2023, I read 105 books, which is astronomical for me. That is easily my personal best for number of books read. I have never even come remotely close to this before, so it definitely was a little bit more difficult to figure out which were my personal top 10 books of the year. But you know what? That's a very good problem to have. Just a little caveat for this video though, this is my personal top 10 of the books that I read in 2023. So I want to make it clear, not all of these books were published in 2023. I just personally read them for the first time in 2023. And I also did want to say that whenever I make this list, I only allow myself to put one book per series on this list because I just don't think it's fair if I'm like, oh, well, this is my favorite series of all time and it's taking 4 out of the top 10 spots. You know what I'm saying? I also, because I am a water sign, refuse to rank these books from 1 to 10. They are all my top 10 favorites. None of them are ranked. And you know what? You can't make me rank them. You can't. My actual best book of the year will literally change depending on my mood and what day you ask me about it and how much coffee I've drank that day. So it's just impossible for me, the person that I am, to give a solid numerical ranking to these books. And again, my channel, my rules, so you just have to deal with that. So without further ado, because this video is probably already going to be too long, here are my personal favorite top 10 books of 2023. Up first, I wanted to talk about The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams. This is kind of crazy because I literally just read this and I genuinely didn't think that it was gonna be in the top 10 when I started it just because of how many other amazing books that I have read. But you know what? It did it. 2023 was a fantastic year for me personally for fantasy books. As you're about to see based on that list, fantasy absolutely killed it for me this year. It's not a surprise, fantasy is my favorite genre, but I just read so many good books. So this is really hard to describe the premise of. It is the first book in the Winnowing Flame trilogy, and it's just a really delightfully bizarre book. You've got these 3 main characters. One is a witch with fire magic. So she's kind of a normal fantasy character. And then we have a middle-aged explorer scholar who she's also kind of a normal fantasy character. But then we also have this elf vampire guy. And I mean, elven vampires are also normal fantasy characters, but also it's not in this book because they're not really vampires because they used to live off of tree sap, but now they can't, so they have to drink human blood and it kind of kills them slowly. It's weird. There also, historically were all of these fights with, the space worm people who are very, very mysterious, and they haven't been seen in, hundreds and hundreds of years, but now people are having dreams about them coming back. Like I said, it's very delightfully bizarre, but, it's really hard to talk about. Like, you kind of just have to read the book, because I'm sure none of the things I'm saying really make much sense, and it's kind of really hard to get the plot just from like a synopsis. And I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give anything away, but this just absolutely nailed it. This is one of the best starts to a fantasy series that I think I've ever read. I absolutely loved it. Even though there's so many like weird, bizarre things, the world building lends itself to like a very accessible world. The actual world definitely feels familiar if you're a fantasy reader, but the characters in the world are very bizarre and there are weird things happening. So you kind of get the best of both worlds, where like you feel very comfortable in this world, you feel like you understand the rules and what is about to happen, but at the same time it also feels very new and creative because there's just so many weird things happening. I don't know how many more times I can say weird before I just have to end this video. So I think it's time to move on, but I absolutely loved this book. Next up, I wanted to talk about Middle Game by Seanan McGuire, and this is just such a special book. And this is my first Seanan McGuire book, so I don't necessarily know if all of her books feel like this. There's just something about the writing in this book that feels truly, truly magical. This is another fantasy, but this time it is an urban fantasy. You follow Roger and Dodger, who are twins, and they are alchemical creations, and they were separated at birth and raised by these different families. Then as adults they kind of connect and things happen. That's so vague. That's so vague. I'm so sorry. This whole video is a mess. I warned you. I warned you it was going to be a mess. So it's your own fault for sticking around. Basically, once the twins kind of like meet up, the creator of them, the alchemist, he basically wants to like try to use the twins in order to attain like godhood, because they are alchemical creations. The last line of the synopsis of this book is, "Godhood is attainable, pray it isn't attained." And that's all I'm gonna say. That's like really all I think you need to know about this book. It is so charming, and there are definitely quite a few whimsical elements in here, but really, like, truly, this is just like a magical book. It is. That's the best word I think to describe it. And I mean, I think alchemy is just like a really interesting premise anyways, and I really, really like the way it is done in here. I think it's interesting. I also really like that this book is kind of like soft and gentle, and I don't really have a way to explain that. I truly wish that I could explain it better, what I mean when I say soft and gentle, but like, I don't know. That is just part of the vibes. This is my first Seanan McGuire book, and I just need to read more by her because I have a feeling that she is going to become a favorite author. I highly, highly recommend this book. Next up on the list is a short little sci-fi book. This is How You Lose the Time War. And this book is so strange. It's so weird. This is definitely one of the weirdest books that I've ever read. This is a book where you follow two like time travelers who are on opposite sides of a time war, and it starts with one of them like foiling the plan of the other and like leaving a note kind of taunting her. And then it becomes this correspondence between the two of them teasing each other and then falling in love. And it is just so amazing. And I cannot believe how creative and weird it is, and also how many emotions it made me feel with like less than 200 pages. Just absolutely blew my mind. I think about this book constantly, and specifically the part where they talk about hunger just lives rent-free in my brain. This book is kind of weird because nothing is really explained throughout like the entire book. Like, you know that this is like two time travelers on opposite sides of this time war, but like, who are they? Why are they fighting a time war? What are these two separate factions? What is the world that exists? How are they even time traveling? Couldn't tell you. Could not tell you. There is like not a single thing is explained in this entire novel, and yet the entire thing makes sense. How? Couldn't tell you. I could not tell you, but it works. It works so very well. And I really hope you give this book a try, and I hope that it works for you as well as it did for me. It definitely is not a book for everybody, but like, if this is a book for you, it will be an all-time favorite. That's all I can say. Next up, I would like to talk about Fool's Errand. This is the first book in the Tawny Man trilogy, and again, I love this entire trilogy. I don't actually think that Fool's Errand is my favorite of this trilogy, but it is the first book in the trilogy, and since I'm only picking one for the series, this is the one that I chose to be the stand-in. This is going to be kind of hard to talk about. This is the third trilogy in the realm of the Elderling, but this is the first book in that trilogy. No, you can't start here. You have to read all 6 other books before you can get to this one. I'm sorry if that upsets you. I don't make the rules, that's just how it is. The realm of the Elderling is Robin Hobb's world, and in the first book and the first trilogy, you follow Fitz, who is the bastard child of the Crown Prince. But when it is discovered that Fitz exists, the Crown Prince abdicates his throne, but Fitz is still brought to the capital. The king kind of sees him and has this idea that because he has royal blood, he can be useful, but because he is a bastard, he can't really be a part of like the succession line. So he trains him to be an assassin for the crown, and it turns out that Fitz also has like multiple types of magic. One that he can like talk to and influence animals, and one that is like a mind magic that he can talk to and influence humans. That is like the basic setup to the first trilogy. Robin Hobb is an all-time favorite author of mine. I cannot wait to read the next series in the realm of the Elderling. I truly hope I can get to it this year. I'm gonna try to squeeze it into book club if I can. The second series in the realm of the Elderling, you're in a different country following a different group of people. And then for the Tawny Man trilogy, you're back following Fitz again, except Fitz is now, I want to say like 35. He is a very different man, a very different character. He has been drastically changed by the things that happened to him. And I mean, obviously in this series, he's going to go through a lot more things, but I literally cannot tell you anything about the actual plot of this. Literally can't tell you a single thing because it's all spoilers. It's all spoilers, but just know that if you haven't tried Robin Hobb, you are missing out and you need to go pick up her books because she's fantastic. She is absolutely a comfort author for me, all-time favorite. I love these books. I would die for them. Fantastic. Amazing. The book I want to talk about next has thankfully finally turned me into a real fantasy fan. I have finally finished The Lord of the Rings for the very first time, and I love it. Favorite series. It is so good. I think about it constantly, and I literally already want to reread this entire series. It's so good. Listen, I don't need to tell you about The Lord of the Rings or like hype it up to you because like it's The Lord of the Rings. You don't need me to explain to you why this series is so good, why so many people love it. You don't need me to tell you what the plot is about. But all I'm going to say is this series gave me a literal existential crisis. And I'm like literal. I'm not exaggerating. It had me sitting here questioning the point of my life, of my existence, of why I exist in the world, of whether I am relevant to humanity, to society, to like the grand scheme of the universe. And you know what? Did that give me a mild depressive episode? Yes, but I don't know what else I can ask for from my fantasy books other than to give me an existential crisis. Like, that has never happened to me before. Like, I've never... What do you do with that information? I don't know. I'm still not really sure of my place in the universe, if we're being honest. I love this series. Probably gonna reread it this year. I haven't put out my goals video yet, but this is gonna be a year of rereading for me. So, The Lord of the Rings, everybody. It's good. You should read it. Next up, we have the only horror novel on this list this year, and that is Don't Fear the Reaper by Stephen Graham Jones. This is the second book in the Lake Witch trilogy, and if you want to read this series, now is the time because the third one comes out in March. It's right around the corner. I am considering it to be a personal birthday present for me from Stephen Graham Jones, so thank you if you ever see this for my birthday present. He's not gonna see this, but that's okay. Stephen Graham Jones is definitely my personal favorite horror author. If you like authors that kind of use like a little bit of stream of consciousness, that the books start a little bit slower paced where like you really sink in and are immersed with your main characters, then Stephen Graham Jones is the horror author for you. I love his writing style. He just is so good at pacing his like actual physical prose. Again, his style isn't going to be for everyone, and there are definitely a lot of people that don't like how slow the starts of a lot of his books are, but like I love it. In my opinion, he is fantastic at pacing novels. Like I think he is so good, and the way he writes and the style of it, like the syntax of his writing actually like backs up the pacing of it in like a really satisfying way. He's so good at using it to like build dread and anticipation for what's gonna happen, because like he's a horror author, so like bad things are definitely gonna happen. Like I said, this is the second book in a series, and so I can't really talk about the specifics of this one, but I will say this is a series that follows Jade, who is a bit of an outcast. She's 17, I think, in the first book, but she's a bit of an outcast, and she definitely has trouble just like relating to people, but she also is like a massive horror fan, specifically slashers, and she kind of uses that as both a defense mechanism, but like also as a way to relate to the world around her. And then she becomes like slowly more and more convinced in the first book that like a real life slasher is happening around her. And so she's trying to be like, okay, it's happening. Like, how are we going to deal with this? What's going to happen? How are we going to survive this coming slasher? Like, when is it going to go down? Like, who's the villain going to be? And so she's trying to figure out all of this stuff. She's trying to like find the final girl. So this is definitely a series that like deals with the final girl trope, which I personally really love. And I also really love Stephen Graham Jones's like personal take on the final girl trope. I know like within horror, the final girl trope can be both like very empowering and also like very objectifying and problematic. And I know that a lot of men do not always write it in an empowering way, but I do think that Stephen Graham Jones has done a really good job with that trope. Oh, the first book is My Heart is a Chainsaw, and I think he did a great job with that trope in My Heart is a Chainsaw, and I really loved it. I love that story. I love this story. I cannot wait for the third book to come out. This is definitely like a book series where like, if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. And like, I'm sorry. I want everyone to get it because I truly love it so much. But I will say that if you try this on my recommendation, just know that I have warned you that the writing is not for everyone and that it is slow paced in the beginning. And I did want to also mention that like, if you pick up My Heart is a Chainsaw and you get like 100 pages in and you're not enjoying it, literally put it down because you're not gonna get to a point where you enjoy it. Like, give it a try, but if you don't like it, like, it's not gonna change. That is the whole series. Like, that is the point. So do whatever you want to do with that information because, you know, you're a free human being who can make their own decisions. I'm just a random person on the internet, so live your life and just know that this is one of my favorite series of all time, and I don't care if you don't like it, but also if you don't like it, don't tell me. Next up, we have Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This is a literary fiction with a little sprinkling of thriller aspects to it. Honestly, I'm sure you've seen this book on a lot of people's best books of the year. I think you probably have also seen it on people's worst books of the year. This book definitely seems to be a lot more polarizing than R.F. Kuang's other titles, but I personally loved it. This is a book that follows June, who is friends with Athena, and June and Athena both graduated from like the same literary program in college, and then Athena instantly became successful when she published her first novel and then has since grown to have even more success and more fame. And June's first novel was a flop. You can kind of use like the term friend for the relationship that they have loosely. It's a very complicated relationship. There is kind of this like tragic accident and Athena dies and June is with her when she dies. The thing about Athena is that when she's working on a manuscript, she doesn't show it to anybody until it's like been fully written and edited. So June found Athena's work in progress and she knows that nobody else has really read the work. So she steals it and publishes it as herself. To go along with the title, Athena is an Asian author and June is a white author. And the book that June stole from Athena is a book about Chinese workers in World War I. So when the book goes to publish, they have June go by Juniper Song instead of June Hayworth, which is what she like originally published as. And that is technically her name. Her name is Juniper and her middle name is Song. So like she's not lying, but then they also have her take an author photo where like she looks a little more tan, a little more racially ambiguous. And so like she's never like outright lying, but like at the same time she's also not being honest. And then this book is basically just like dealing with the fallout and like what happens because of the decisions that June makes. Now, like I said, this book does have thriller aspects to it. I wouldn't really ever recommend this as just a thriller because I think that the thriller aspects are kind of like what pushes the plot along, but it is much more about the commentary, and this book is like very meta. It is extremely aware, and like I personally loved the meta-ness of it. Like that was, I think, one of my favorite parts, and I do think that is like what makes the book a bit polarizing, because when I see people that did not like this book, they did not like how meta it was. They thought that was kind of obnoxious. So I don't know if it's something that you personally would like, but like I absolutely loved that. I thought that there was like a lot of humor in how meta it was. I think this is also a book that is like a lot about the characters themselves, and watching June perform just absolute Olympic level mental gymnastics to justify all of the shitty things she's done, and then also learning about Athena posthumously, but at the same time like we're learning about her through June's lens, so like it's a little bit skewed, and I don't know, like it was just, I found it really compelling, really intriguing, really interesting to read, because like June is so despicable. Like she is such a despicable human, but at the same time there were like a couple points in here where I was like, you got a good point, you got a good point. And I just think that that is like such an interesting place to write from. As an author, I think that this was just a really fun, creative project for R.F. Kuang. I think that you can really tell in the writing how much fun R.F. Kuang had. I think it just really shines. If you like books that are a bit satirical, that have a bit of social commentary, that are interesting character studies, that are very meta, then I think that you will really love this book, because I had an absolutely great time reading it. We have yet another book that I can't really tell you very much about, because this is the third and concluding novel in a series. This is The Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty, or Shannon Chakraborty. With her newest release, she has changed like her author name to be Shannon Chakraborty now. I love her. She is such a talented writer. Oh my god, like she's so good. She builds these worlds that are so absolutely immersive and atmospheric, and it's just like when you're existing in these worlds, like they just feel so real. This takes place in Cairo, and then like also the magical kingdom of Daevabad, so it's like a very like dry, warm climate for most of it. And like I swear to God, I could feel the heat. I could smell the food that the characters were cooking. Like it just is so immersive and so atmospheric. She is absolutely going to be one of the great fantasy writers of this generation. Like I'm telling you right now, she is so freaking talented. The series is mostly high fantasy because the majority of it does take place, like I said, in this magical city of Daevabad. However, there are parts of it like I mentioned, that do take place in Cairo, and you're basically following Nari, who is a con woman. She basically pretends to do healing magic for people, but it's all a scam. But one day she's running a scam and she accidentally summons a Jinn warrior, and he's like, you shouldn't have been able to do this. Therefore, you are magical. You are a deva. I'm taking you back to Daevabad. And she's like, excuse me? And he's like, yeah, I'm not giving you a choice. You're coming with me. Along the way, they get attacked by magical creatures. And then they reach Daevabad, and things happen. The Jinn warrior that she summons name is Dara. And then once she gets to Daevabad, she also meets Ali, the prince. Well, one of the princes. It is just such a good series. I will say that this one is definitely very, very political. I personally love political fantasy. I mean, honestly, there really isn't like a genre of fantasy I don't like. So you shouldn't be surprised to hear that I like political fantasy. But this series is very, very political. I would say that that is like one of like the primary driving factors in this. So I think if you do not like political fantasy, then I probably wouldn't say start with this series. I would probably say start with Shannon Chakraborty's other series like Amina. But if you like political fantasy, definitely look into the Daevabad trilogy. It is just so well crafted, and I think the characters are so extremely believable. They feel real, they feel flawed, and you can really sense the motivation behind like why they're doing what they're doing. It makes sense. And then like when they have to deal with the repercussions of their own actions, like it all just works. It just works. Listen, now I want to reread this series too, and like I just don't have the time for that. I don't, but I want to. It's really, really good. We're almost done. 2 books left, and I have to talk about the Blood Mercy series. Sorry, the Blood Grace book. This is the first book in that series, Blood Mercy by Bella Roth. If you don't know, this year I kind of stumbled my way into romance. I didn't see it coming, but I'm so happy that it happened. It has brought me such joy. This series it's joy. It's joy. I love it. It's serotonin. It's perfection. This is like a new all-time favorite series. This is a romance fantasy, and in it you follow Cassia and Leo. Cassia is the daughter of the king. He is not a good dude. Leo is a vampire. They don't call them vampires in this, but like he's a vampire, and he is an apprentice ambassador sent with like a political envoy to have peace talks with the leading politicians of Cassia's kingdom. Him and Cassia meet, and they slowly build this just like really adorable, really sweet, very earnest friendship that then like evolves to just a stunning, adorable romance, and it's just perfect. It's just so sweet and perfect and cute and gives you butterflies and makes you smile, and I don't know what to tell you, but if you like romance, please read this series. I think it is so amazing. The plotline also really moves things forward. I don't have enough good things to say about this series, but honestly, I'm probably going to reread this whole series even if book 8 doesn't come out, because I just love it so much. And listen, your girl's been struggling with mental health, and you know what? This helps. Listen, I don't think that I'm the first person to discover this, but just in case I am just an absolute scientific genius, I'm going to tell you that reading romance is good for your mental health, okay? Like this helps the anxiety brain goblins, okay? It just does. It does. Yeah, so I'm gonna keep reading this series, potentially gonna start it as soon as I finish this video because I don't have very much self-control. And then the last book that I want to talk to you about today is The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. This book is everything. This is a book where you follow this man, and he is a scholar of like myths and fairy tales, and he meets this woman named Indigo, and he falls madly in love. The two of them get married after like a very short engagement, and they just seem like they are perfect for each other. They both love and care for each other so much. But before they got married, Indigo made him promise that he would never like dig into her past and her family, and he agreed. But then they get like a letter or a call, I don't remember, that Indigo's grandmother, aunt, oh my god, I don't remember, she is sick. They have to go to Indigo's family home so that they can like try to help care for her. And once they get there, it like turns out to be kind of a mansion. Indigo is an heiress. When they get there, the groom can tell that the vibes are off. Just like a fairy tale, he cannot contain his curiosity, and so he starts to do a little digging, and the more he digs, the weirder things get. This book is absolutely a dark fairy tale. It is a gothic fairy tale. The whole book just reads like an amazing, decadent, beautiful, sinister dream. The entire time you're reading this, you're kind of questioning, like, is this a dream? Is this reality? Like, the edges of everything feel so soft and nebulous, and Roshani Chokshi just did an absolutely amazing job capturing the atmosphere of this. It is just utter perfection. I love it. This is also like a very interesting book because even though Indigo is the main character, you never actually get her point of view. You alternate between her husband's point of view, and then there is like also a past storyline where you get the point of view of her best friend. So I just think it's so interesting and creative that this is essentially Indigo's story, but you're also not actually getting it told to you by Indigo. So you have to spend a lot of time reading between the lines and kind of trying to make out the shape of this woman on your own, because everything that you see and read about her is told through the lens of somebody else. This is a story of love and what we do for the people we love, but also obsession and how we try to control the circumstances around us. It's so beautiful, and I love this, and I really, really hope that you will give this book a chance because it's just so stunning and so amazing. Okay, well, there you have it. Those are my personal top 10 books from 2023, and I'm so sorry for how long this video is. I can't stop myself from just gushing endlessly about things that I love. I truly, truly hope that I have piqued your interest in at least one of these books. If I have piqued your interest in one of them, please let me know. I desperately want to hear what you think about any of these books. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. And again, I am sorry that I missed last week's video. I got sick again at Christmas. This is like the second year in a row that I have gotten sick at Christmas. Next week's video is going to be the worst books that I read last year. But again, thank you for spending time with me today. Please stay safe this week, stay warm this week, and I'll see you in my next video. Goodbye!